Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Mouthwash Show. We are coming off of a good week last week. We had a bunch of people involved, and we do want you to come into the live chat and ask questions of our guests and of our co-hosts, which I'm going to introduce. And Ashton, the birthday girl, is up. How you doing, Ashton?
Just feeling 25, living life.
Yeah, that's 25. I remember those days. Long
I
time
think
ago.
it's the first birthday I've had where I've sat there and I've been like, I feel old. I feel I feel a quarter of a century, and that weirded me out a little bit.
Well, I mean, let's get back. Let's introduce the young whippersnapper of the group. He's just barely old enough to drink. Jacob, how are you this evening?
I'm doing good, and actually, kind of to tag on to Ashton's point there about 25, that's kind of how I felt with 21. It's like you feel like you knocked out all the milestones, and now you're just waiting for Social Security now.
Yeah. Well, you can add your edges up, and it's not quite mine, so I feel good. Well, and one of our comments was, "Who's that old guy that's on the right?" But hey, we're going to get right to it. We got a lot to do tonight. So what I'm going to do is we had three bills and a lie last week, and so we had some voting. Not as much as I thought we'd get on the voting on this, but I'm going to put up our bills, and we're going to reveal who is actually telling the fib on this thing. So the first one was a state law stipulates that a person is guilty of a misdemeanor of the first degree if he deals in humanity by trading, bartering, buying, selling, or dealing in infant children for cryptocurrency. Oh, the second one. This one was this Jacob? Did you have this one? No hunting.
Yes, I did. Yep.
No huntings on Sunday. Unless you are killing raccoons, it's illegal to hunt or kill any wild bird or animal, including any nuisance species on Sundays. However, it is permissible to kill raccoons. And last but not least, Bigfoot hunters, beware. Slaying a Bigfoot to be a felony. You can sell children for a misdemeanor, but Bigfoot killing is a felony and punishable by 5 years in prison. The law was later amended, designating Bigfoot as an endangered species. Okay, well, most of you put the laughing or the on the last one, the Bigfoot. That is a real law, and I believe it was from Pennsylvania. I'm not positive, which you'd think.
I think it was Minnesota.
Minnesota. That would make more sense. The other one was from the middle one, killing raccoons on. I think that was Oklahoma. Where was that, Jacob? That was somewhere Missouri or something like that. That is true. You cannot hunt raccoons on Sunday. The lie is this one. There you go. And this is from Pennsylvania. And actually, all I did on this one was change the words to cryptocurrency. So these are all sort of crazy bills that were introduced in legislature at some point in time. So tonight we have conspiracy theories, so stick around for that. But first, we are going to get right to our guest, and I am very excited to bring this guest on, and she is ready backstage, so we're going to bring her on, and we're going to meet Emme Donavon. Maybe. She's frozen. Oh, dear. She's frozen. Oh, I see you. Okay, there you are, Emme.
Hi.
I love technology. It's great when it works. So, Emme, welcome to the 5th episode of Mouthwash. And you've met our lovely co-host backstage. And we're going to have some questions and whatnot. But first, we want to know a little bit about you and some of your background. And give us the cliff notes of your story. So, go ahead.
All right. Well, my name is Emme Donavon. My friends call me Emme. And you're definitely one of my friends, John. I am not transgender. Okay, I'm intersexed. I was actually born both sexes because of a medication that my mom took to prevent a miscarriage called DES. It was discontinued in 1972 because of all the problems it caused. which created a lot of people like me. My particular form of intersex, it was able to go hidden. So I was able to serve in the military, and I served in the 23rd Flying Tigers as a special operations aviator on the C-130. I I'm a Gulf War veteran, and I was in a really bad car wreck in '93 that ended my flying career. And during all the MRIs and the X-rays, uh, they discovered a few things. The doctor came to me and he says, "We've got to talk." And I was like, "Well, what'd you find? What's up?" And he was like, "Well, we found a bunch of female stuff inside you, and we believe you're born intersex." I'm like, "What?" That explains a lot. So my life took an immediate left-hand turn, and I went down a completely different path than I had really planned for my life. Uh, I was an engineer. I'm still an engineer. I got my degree in aerospace engineering from Embry-Riddle when I was in the Air Force, and I worked for the aerospace industry for a number of years, and now I work in the automotive industry as a maintenance manager and electronic controls engineer. Currently, I'm in a rock and roll band at 51 years old. And who would have thought I'd be doing something like that? It's nuts. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I've got two wonderful sons. One is in the Army serving in the infantry right now. And my youngest son is one of Indy's youngest recording artists, getting ready to put out his third EP. So that's me. That's the quick and skinny on me.
Okay, so I got one question. So when you were in the as the Air Force or in the Gulf War,
Yes.
were you okay? Were you in as a male or a female? I'm just trying to figure that part out.
I was in as a male. I was in as a male. I fall far enough on the spectrum to where back in the day it was easy to conceal what was different about me, and so but later in life I began to have some issues. I had horrible headaches. My health was just not good. Joint pain, just all these odd symptoms. And after they were doing these brain scans, they thought I had a brain tumor. And the doctor's like, "You have a mighty interesting brain." And my brain is actually a female brain. I have a thicker cortical wall in 3 areas of my brain, exists in females. And so I was part of a lot of brain studies and stuff over the years. And I've done a lot of different medical research studies to help doctors understand things, what causes people to be intersexed, and especially for DES. That was they still deny that, or the manufacturer still denies that DES ever caused such a thing. But now there's just so much evidence towards it. At some point, I expect they're going to have to face the music.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are so glad you decided to come on with us, and you know, I just had fun chatting with you back and forth. This is actually the first real face-to-face. I know we've seen each other out and about, and probably wondered who each other are at some of the things. So we're going to start out with the question of the night, and I'm going to let Ashton introduce that question. And here you go. And you ought to get along well with Ashton. You have the female brain, so that's it. So Ashton, go right ahead.
Well, I think what we had decided to kind of focus on, because there's a lot of different topics revolving around gender and sexual orientation and identity. And so I think what we kind of decided to focus on tonight, and we'll focus on other things moving forward in other shows, but what how early is too early to start talking about gender identity and what that might look like for a child or someone that a child might know. Some people might argue that introducing that concept to a child early on is harmful. Some people say that people try and force their children to be transgender. And so that's kind of a topic that we're looking at and talking about. And yeah, I think that's pretty much. You usually introduce this stuff, so I don't know how to introduce a topic. I just talk after.
I was messing it up. And, Mike, and how I think Emme would be helpful in this is with her struggle of trying to figure this out, because, just as being not having those physical issues, how was it with you trying to sort through that? That seemed like it took a very long time for that to play out, and it took an accident and some other things for, things to get right where they were supposed to be.
Well, I always knew what I was. I knew early on, as a kid, I always identified as female. I always knew I was different. Um, so, but it was never a struggle for me. Um, I, I was raised a lot differently than most people. I'm Native American. I was raised to be a warrior, not a victim. So I don't buy into the victimology. I just, it's a foreign concept to me. I can't even understand it. So I've always liked who I am and what I am. I find a problem that comes in the trans community is that people think that they are a certain way, and they think that this transition is going to fix them, and it doesn't. Um, you can change your chemistry, you can change your sex, you can get all of the surgeries you want, but ultimately, you're still the same person inside. And they come to that harsh realization that they didn't like who they were, and they're still that same person. Um, Anybody who wants to transition, the
Uh-oh.
first, uh,
Okay, there you go. We lost you we heard your words, but we didn't see you were frozen, but we can still hear what you're saying. So go on. And so I guess the question at hand is
yeah,
how early, I mean, I talked to some people and they say, I knew I felt the other way from very early on. And that sounds like you had that experience, but you had more probably female hormones that were larger in line with that. So is that what
yeah.
maybe the difference is?
Well, time's different now. Back then, we were not constantly bombarded and over sexualized by the media as children. And this is a problem. We are, you need to leave kids alone. That's child abuse. You are bombarding these children with this over sexualized idea, trying to convince them they're trans just so that it can fit your crazy, whacked out narrative. And these are impressionable kids. They're going to do the things that they see. They're going to want to do the things they see. And when these lives are sensationalized, when being trans is being sensationalized by people like RuPaul, which, by the way, I think drag queens are the blackface performers of the trans community. I find them very offensive. Um, when these things are sensationalized and constantly put in front of children, their impressionable minds are going to gravitate towards that. So you're not getting a true read on the child. Um, when I was a kid and this stuff wasn't out there, if the kid would have mentioned it, then that would be the time to deal with it. When the child mentions it to you, you don't put it onto them. Don't be trying to pry into their young impressionable minds the idea of being trans. Um, it's not fair to them. And anybody who would train a child, they should go to jail. A doctor that does it should go lose their license. That is flat out child abuse. These hormones are very dangerous. this stuff can be life-threatening and can properly transition until the brain. Plain and simple. Any real doctor who's not trying to make a buck off of you will tell you the same thing. You cannot transition until you're fully developed. If you're going to get sexual reassignment surgery, you cannot transition until you are fully developed, because you just don't have the you don't have the proper physiology until you're matured.
And that's go ahead, Ashton. I'll let you do that. Just one quick note here: the chat's blowing up with a lot of folks that are sort of agreeing with that on that side of things. And Ashton, I'd like to hear your comments on that.
Well, real quick, I want to clear something up. Just because we talked about a school topic last week doesn't mean we're continuing to talk about a school topic. We're more so talking about just like in the home with your child this week. So everybody talking about, everyone's like commenting in the school. So I'm like, we did a school topic last week. Right now we're talking about like from a parent perspective, talking to your kids about it, and parents with doctors and things along those lines. But I think that, in my opinion, I don't think it should be pushed on anybody by any means. But I do think that just talking about what gender is and how that can kind of play out in someone's life, I think that's appropriate to talk about with a child. When a child is 12 months old, they automatically start to categorize their world. And that's kind of before they can even understand abstract topics. So when they're doing that, I mean, this is just a psychological concept. They are going to start to categorize men and women. And so kids oftentimes want to know where they belong. So they'll often categorize themselves where they are assigned at birth. So, because you're assigned a sex at birth. And that might not be how you identify, but that is what you're assigned with, because typically that's the sex organs that you have. So the thing is that I think that we have to have this conversation and say, there are people who might have been assigned as a woman at birth, but that might not be how they feel on the inside. And that's okay. And I think that's really where we have problems, is everybody thinks of it as this dangerous, terrible thing. But it's really just teaching kids acceptance, not only acceptance of others, but if they're having those feelings, acceptance of themselves. So they don't feel ashamed if they do have those feelings. And that is how they identify, that they can speak to their parent about it. They can speak to their friends about it. Or if there's somebody that they know that feels that way, they're not confused about it and know how to deal with it. So I think that that's really where I come from on it, is that if my, daughter decides she wants to play with trucks and she wants to wear basketball shorts, cool. And if that ends up, you can explore what you're interested in. I'm not going to say you can't do that because that's for girls. That's just gender roles, and having them have the ability to explore things that they enjoy and they want to do. And if later down the road, they come to me and they say, I don't feel like a woman, then okay, we can explore that further then. But I want my child to feel comfortable doing what they like to do and how they feel inside. And that's kind of where I come from on it, is I would never want to make my child feel like they can't come to me about something that they're feeling or who they feel like they truly are. And I think that's what really gets mixed up in all this.
Yeah. And Ashton, I see what you're saying there. I got a feeling that Jacob might not see this one the same way. Go ahead, Jacob. Give us some thoughts.
Yes, to preface my point, I will say I agree with Emme very much on something that she said in regards to children. I do think that in regards to gender, sexuality, all those kind of things, I do not think that this stuff should be talked about in depth with young children. I think a lot of times their minds are not ready to hear this stuff. And quite frankly, it can be scarring if they hear a lot of in-depth sexual things before they've reached, puberty and at the age when they're really more mentally astute to process these things. Now, it comes to the concept of gender. I certainly believe that the physical component, the biological gender, is really how you determine sex or gender. Because the thing is, if we're just talking about gender roles, quote unquote, or I feel like a woman or I feel like a man, a lot of these concepts actually vary by culture. For example, in 19th century culture in France, it was very common for boys to be wearing pink and for girls to be wearing blue. As we know in our everyday society, we always associate pink with girls and blue with boys. That's just a very a very surface example, a very basic example, but it goes to show that these ideas of what a specific gender, what defines the male or female gender varies by culture. But the one consistent thing I think that maintains throughout all cultures, in my belief, is that biological features, biological sex, is what determines gender on an empirical black and white basis. Because I'll give another example. In the in ancient times, you had the Amazonians, who were considered warrior women, or among the ancient Celts, you had warrior women, when technically throughout history, it was always men that were seen as the warriors and women that were seen as the housewives. But as we can see, these concepts can vary by culture. So thus, the only objective criteria of gender or sex, in my opinion, is biology.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jacob, I know you got something. That's a great segue back to our guest, because Lisa asked, I want to hear Emmy's take on this. And she was telling us about how she was a woman warrior. So, Emmy, what do you heard both of those situations there? What say you?
Well, again, the greatest thing about being an American citizen is that we have the rights and the ability to live our lives as we see fit. It's our right. So if you want to portray yourself as the opposite sex, great. You can do that here. This is America. If that's, the path that your child wants to take, and you encourage that, and you're a supportive parent, great. But let's not be doing any kind of gender reassignments or hormone therapies until they're at least 18. Children just do not have the mind, they do not have the capacity to make life-altering decisions for themselves. That's why we don't let them drink, we don't let them smoke, we tell them they have to go to school. We don't allow our children to make life-defining choices. They're just not capable. Their brains are not developed for that kind of thought. As far as the woman warrior, people like myself in the Native American communities were called Two-Spirit, and they were highly respected among their communities because they had the ability to see both sides. They could see the male side, they could see the female side. And one of our greatest warriors that you will never, ever hear about, she's been wiped from most of the history books, is Tish. And the name translates to finds them and kills them. She was born male and lived her entire life as a female. And during the Battle of Rosebud against the Lakota, she was a Sioux. One of the warriors fell off of his horse, and she ran to his rescue, grabbed his Henry repeating rifle, and fired it at its absolute mechanical limits, reloaded and fired time after time after time. She was with another woman named the Other Magpie, who was, by all accounts, a lunatic. She was armed with a stick. She would go out and hit the warriors on the head, and Ashtish would shoot them dead, and that's how she earned her moniker. After the battle, they were rounded up and put on a reservation like a lot of us. And the priest there that was in charge shaved her head, made her wear men's clothing, and she died a broken person. And it's a shame that such a great warrior was ultimately defeated by, um, uh, I guess you could say, gender bias. This not understanding the culture. And people like me exist in a lot of warrior cultures. I myself served in the military. And believe it or not, we're going to make a lot of liberal heads explode right now. I am a major in the Indiana militia. So um, it's there's a lot of us who serve. Almost all the trans females that I know, or I should say, properly say, intersexed females that I know, served in the military. A lot of us served in special operations or some form of technology. And a lot of us are engineers in our lives after. So um, we do have some common things about us. But
Yeah. And I think that I want to get to some more questions here. I think that is, we could say your feelings toward what's inside of you is still, it drives us to be a certain way. And I know Ashton's got some psychology background, and I'm a big behavioral psychologist. And I like Watson. If you've heard of Baby Watson, was a baby back in the 20s that was trained to be afraid of clowns. And then you got Banduras and Young, who were later on, and they've done famous experiments where the parent does something to a doll in the room and leaves, and then the kid does the same thing. So behavior is a big part of the development. So my question is going to be, let's see, we had, here we go. This is from Jennifer McWilliams. The brain is not fully developed until age 25. Let's start with Ashton, and we'll go to Jacob, and then we'll go to Emme, and I want to get some comments on that about when do you think, maybe some of your personal, when you thought you had your stuff together, and maybe theoretically what you think is a kid's limit, based on those type of things. So hopefully that made sense with the question.
Yeah, I think that something that's important is to, even though a kid's brain might not be fully developed, we can't discredit that a child has feelings. Kids commit suicide. Kids have all sorts of mental health problems that relate to feeling this gender dysphoria and not having any way to express it outwardly. And so we have to really look at that too. Just because someone's brain isn't developed doesn't mean that they can't feel, and that they don't have the right to say what feels best for them. And I do understand that ultimately children can't always make the best decision for themselves. But in this situation, I think this is really something that we need to listen to kids and talk to them about and appreciate where they're coming from. And I did a lot of research because, admittedly, I am not super familiar with the effects of a hormone treatment on an adolescent. And so I wanted to look into that before I said anything on the show. And all the studies that I found from the American Pediatric Society, the University of Missouri, there were a lot of different studies, and they all cited different studies. And they were talking about how over a 2-year span, a hormone treatment is not found to be harmful to adolescents. That there are things that can be harmful, but hormone treatment, puberty blockers, are not. And then I talked to a friend of mine who identifies as they, them, and I spoke with them about it to ask kind of their perspective. And they said that that's the argument a lot of times, is that something that they might go through might be irreversible. And they said, so is puberty. Puberty is also irreversible. So if this is how someone's truly feeling, and then they are going through the trauma of this, we actually see that people who are able to take these puberty blockers have lower rates of suicide and depression. So I think that's something that we should look at and consider. I don't think necessarily going through a gender affirming surgery at 10 is appropriate, but giving those puberty blockers, allowing them to wear what feels comfortable, express what feels comfortable, identify as what feels comfortable, is something that's really important to allow a child to do, because it's how they feel. It's who they feel that they are.
Okay, before we get to you, here's a question from Jennifer McWilliams that we don't, true, false, or otherwise. Hormones make children sterile. Does anybody have any research or any study? Oh, wait,
Okay,
I guess.
see, you're talking to somebody who takes tons of hormones. All right? This stuff is dangerous. Before I started taking the hormones, they said, "Are you sure you don't want to have children?" That's the end of it. The minute you start taking these hormones, you're not having kids. Because if you do, those kids are going to come out screwed up. You cannot take hormones. It is not a reversible process. These are very dangerous. You can get issues with pulmonary embolism, deep vein thrombosis. They are very dangerous to take.
Okay, here's a question from.
Hold on, real quick, because from what I read, and Emme, I don't know when you took those hormones or when they were originally given to you, but according to the Journal of Adolescent Health, the impact of those hormones was historically that way, but currently there's no clinical significance that's observed.
They want to make money, so they're going to say that. And I'm telling you, because I have been in clinical research studies for decades, okay? I am currently patient 0 for a brand new progesterone study, a micronized progesterone that's never been used before in trans females. I'm the first patient to get a long-term study. I get briefed, and I know this stuff thoroughly. I know this stuff better than the doctors most of the time. I do the research before I take the drugs. I do the research better than these doctors. There is plenty of it out there, and it all says that it is harmful to adolescents. You're halting their natural growth. You're halting their natural ability. Anytime you're going against nature, you're going to have a problem. This stuff is dangerous for children. Leave the children alone. It's child abuse. If they want to dress as the opposite sex, let them. If they want to grow their hair long, let them. If they want to buzz their hair short, let them. Let them appear the way they want to appear. That's fine. But you do not give them life-altering drugs or surgeries. I don't know a single one of my trans friends that agrees with that. They all say the same thing I do.
Okay, and I mean, this is like really, I mean, we're getting into the meat and potatoes of this thing now, because we have somebody here that's in the research study. So we have somebody, and that's why I was excited about you coming on here, Emme, because it's just, I'm just so curious about this, because it's just something that is just so wild. I mean, it's like I'm just minding my own business, being a man over here doing my thing, and this is crazy. So Lisa has a question for you, Emme, before we get to Jacob, because I know I can see his little wheels turning up there. On your children, are you considered mom or dad?
They call me Mops.
Mock?
Mops. M-O-P-P-S.
Okay. What's the story behind that? Is there just
kind of a cross between Pops and Mom? Moms.
Okay. And this is what I love about Emme.
Some kids were, you know how kids are kids, and they're doing the, oh, my dad's better than your dad business. My son pipes up, like, yeah, well, my dad can kick your dad's ass, and she's prettier than your mom. And I've seen your mom.
That's what I knew when we talked before you came on here. You just had such a pleasant attitude in text about, hey, you've embraced a situation of your life that you were sort of thrown into, and I already can tell that you're in research to help others. You're on this show to bring education to dummies like me. And I just appreciate that. And I know our co-hosts do as well. So, Jacob, let's hear what you have to say. I think the original question might have been, when do you think your brain was fully developed and all that good stuff? But that doesn't matter. You can go off script, take it
Well,
away.
I think I can kind of tie into that a little bit, John. I think that in reality, I don't really believe that a man or, a boy or a girl or woman really knows fully what their, kind of what it means to be a man or a woman until they really go through puberty, because that's when you go through all the development sexually that men go through and the women go through when they hit that age. So I think putting these puberty blockers in a way disrupts a huge transition point in somebody's life where they really feel fully what it's like to be a man and fully what it's like to be a woman. So I think that God designed the human being the way he did for a reason, and puberty is there for a reason. And I think simply interrupting this natural process is not appropriate for a parent to do to a child, because by definition, by the law, a child cannot make his or her own decision with that. Their parent or legal guardian is responsible for that. So I don't think the child is really capable of making this decision on their own. And I don't think going out there and putting puberty blockers or some sort of unnatural hormones to disrupt their natural growth process is something that is beneficial for a child. If a child feels differently and they want to go through this medical procedure, they should make that decision when they're of age of maturity, not have somebody else in a sense make it for them, like legally the parent would have to.
And
Can I interject?
giddy up.
So this is someone told me to cite my sources, so I'm citing my sources. The American Academy of Pediatrics. Youth with gender dysphoria who receive gender affirming medical care, so hormone blockers, gender affirming hormones, they experience a decrease in emotional and behavioral problems and an improvement in overall psychological functioning. So this is across a lot of different studies. And I think that we have to really look at, this isn't kids that have for like 4 days said that they identify as male or female. This is working for kids that have felt this way for long extended periods of time. This isn't a phase. This is who these kids are on the inside. And respecting your child's bodily autonomy is important as a parent. And I also am in agreement that I don't think gender affirming surgery is necessarily appropriate for a 12-year-old. And that should be a decision that's made when they become an adult. But I do think that the hormone blockers and gender affirming hormones medically, and I know, Emme, you're saying that they are not safe. And I think that's just going to come down to a differing in what we trust. I trust medical professionals. I know a lot of people don't. They say it's for money and it's big pharma. So that's just a differing thing. I know we have differing opinions on masks. So I know that we're just going to differ on what is a trustworthy source. But to me, a trustworthy source is a doctor and medical organizations, multiple medical organizations, psychological associations saying that this is safe for youth in moderation and for a certain period of time.
But you see, Ashton, where there can be a big problem with. I remember I was reading about a case that happened in Texas last year, where you actually had a mother that was forcibly trying to get, I believe it was a son that she wanted to transition to a daughter. She was basically trying to have the son become a daughter, and the father objected to that and was vehemently objecting to that. And basically the mother was just claiming that the kid wanted to do this transition. I know that when I was a little kid, if my mommy told me to do something and said this was something that's right and this is something the kid that I should be doing, I probably was going to do that because I was a very obedient child. So I think that this whole idea of saying, oh, puberty blockers are okay to give some child really kind of opens this door up for, like, say, some kind of sick mother or father that just wants to force their will on their child and convince them, hey, you're not a boy, you're a girl, even though, maybe the little child doesn't really even know what it means to be a boy or a girl, and it's just being kind of told these things by their parents. So it could open up cases of abuse if you allow this to go unrestricted.
Yeah, I definitely hear that as a concern, and I've definitely heard situations where that is the case. And I do think, like I said at the beginning, I don't think it's right to force something on a child. Absolutely not. I don't think that if a child if you have someone who is, has male sex organs, and then you decide you wanted a daughter, I don't think it's right to try and convince them that they identify as female. Absolutely not. It's up to the child. So I think that what we have to do is look at how can we regulate it. How can we regulate it to make sure that situations like that don't happen? But not take it away from people who genuinely feel that way. And this is genuinely going to be something that could save their lives and their psychological health.
Well, I think Emme wants to jump in on that, so go right ahead.
Yeah, you talk about your feelings on this and your opinion on this, but I was one of those kids. I grew up that way. I know what it's like. I know how I felt from the time I was a very small child. But that doesn't change anything. You don't give children these hormones. To give you an idea of what I take and what's required to do this, okay, a birth control pill is 0.03 milligrams of estrogen, okay? I take 3 milligrams of estrogen every day. And progesterone is 0.05 milligrams of progesterone in a birth control pill. I take 100 milligrams of progesterone 10 days out of the month. I also take 25 milligrams of a testosterone blocker. Okay, spironolactone. These are dangerous drugs. They cause blindness. They can cause memory loss. They cause short-term memory loss. I have to have my blood tested every 3 months to make sure that the drugs are not killing me. Okay, and that's as an adult. This is a fully formed, and I'm a very healthy adult. I watch my diet. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I've never used drugs. And then you think that it's okay to give these to children? It's not. My medications for the estrogen every month was right around $1,200. And then for the progesterone, you're looking at another, I think it was $560 for the progesterone. And another $300 testosterone blocker. So it's a money racket.
Yeah.
Now, me being intersex, I'm very low as the VA picked up. And now it's huge. But connected another plus, you're not going to the doctor to get it. You're going through the system called WPATH. WPATH is a criminal organization. I call it the trans mafia. They wrangle you into these doctor visits. You have to go through psychological evaluations for years. You have to live exactly the way they tell you have to live. You have to dress the way they tell you to dress. You have to go to your visits every week. You have to go to support groups every week. And if then you get through all of this in 3 years, they might give you permission to get the transition. They might. So yeah, I know these people. I see these people all the time. And then they're not given their pass after they spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars going to these doctors. They're not given their sign-off sheet to transition. Yeah, that's why they kill themselves, because they're given false hope. They're given this idea that they can be something that they'll never be. They're sold a bill of goods. Oh, you can be a girl because you feel like a girl. And that's not how it works. If I had done nothing, I would have never been fully a male. And no matter how many hormones I take, no matter how many surgeries I get, I will never fully be a female. I am a trans female. I live in the real world. I understand this. I like who I am. I'm okay with who I am. But the problem is, these people, they're selling these children a bill of goods. You got to leave the children alone. I get passionate about this. Can you tell? Leave the children alone. They're being sold an idea that's not reasonable. It's not logical, and it will never come to fruition because they will never be able to be what they're told that they can be. That's why they kill themselves.
I agree. I agree with Emmy wholeheartedly on that. I really think that a young 8-year-old child does not understand the impacts of these very, very these very, very effective drugs that have a lot of effects on a person. Like Emmy was just citing right there, all the different effects of these drugs have on a person. An 8-year-old child does not fully comprehend that, and really does not have the mental fortitude or development to make that decision. And it's not because there's something wrong with the child, it's because it's a child. A child doesn't have the same mental acuity as an adult. And that's why the law treats children differently. So we can't expect children to be able to make the same decision that an 18-year-old man or woman would make.
Yep. And I'm going to help. I'm going to help you, Ashton, here, because this is what I'm going to jump in with a little program note here. Sometimes our subject gets a little lopsided. We've had some time where the liberal side was a little stronger than the conservative side. And this one in the chat is sort of lining up that way. And I think I'm going to go out on a limb here and clarify Ashton's, what I hear her saying is that we can't ignore the feelings of these people. And I think Emmy would agree with this. We can't ignore the feelings of a child. And what I heard her say was, let them, if they want to be like a girl, but don't induce the hormones and let this, if it is a phase, let it grow out. If it's not a phase, then later on action can be taken, but it's very hard to reverse this situation, especially when you have brain chemistry involved. And I know with Ashton as a psychologist, she knows that as well. And I don't want people to pile up on her and say, oh, but it's part of her job on this show is to defend that side of things. So I just wanted to put that point of interest in here. And then I will let you, we're getting close on time. I knew we'd roll this out. I wanted to get one more question in though. I'll let Ashton to fill in that because I don't want to speak for you, but I do want the audience to know that this is a civil discussion. Everyone's opinion is welcome. And just because you don't agree with me or Jacob or Ashton or Emmy, just cool your jets, okay? So here's this question from Alex. If I can find it, where is it? I want to ask this one. It'll be our last one of the night. Let's go with this one because honestly, I don't know what this is. So somebody help me out here. Somebody help the old man out. What about informed consent clinics? Yeah. So help me. I don't know what that is.
Informed consent. This is how I transitioned, was through informed consent. I didn't have to go W path. I did go through all the hoops and hurdles. Informed consent is when you do your research and you do your study and you present your case in front of a physician, in front of a board, and they grant you your ability to transition. When I showed up with all my medical documentation and the evidence that I was intersex, I did have to talk to a few people. I talked to a mental health specialist that lasted like 15 minutes, and I had her laughing her butt off. And she's like, you're completely normal, Em. And she stamped my paper and sent me on to the doctor. So then it became, they still really didn't know a lot about these drugs and how to transition someone properly. So I presented my research study and the type of drugs I wanted to take, the amount that I wanted to start with, and how to proceed with that. And since I had all the proper information, they granted that to me.
Okay, that helps me. So anybody else want to weigh in on that one? I mean, Emmy did a great job explaining that.
From a medical perspective, I understand it from my ethics courses. Informed consent in the medical field pertains to you can't do something unless someone is informed about what they're doing. It's not ethical to do something if someone does not understand the risks involved in something.
Okay, Jacob, you want to?
Yeah, and I would honestly argue the very point that children do not understand the long-term effects of these drugs, as I stated before, because I would say that until they really go through puberty, and they don't really know fully what gender and sex is. I know certainly anecdotally, as a young teenager myself, I didn't really understand everything fully until I started developing biologically, and my parents gave me the talk, so I just don't think little children are in the position to give this consent. Whereas an informed adult, even if I disagree with their decision or I agree with it or whatever, that doesn't really matter. That's their decision to make because they're an adult. But a child cannot legally make that decision on their own nor psychologically fully process it, is what
So something that I'd like to present here is just this idea that while a child might not be able to give informed consent, somehow it's not their parents' decision to decide that this is what's best for their child. And if they do their research, that they can decide that this is a good move for their child. I hear a lot of talk between this week and last week. Parents know what's best for children. Apparently not in this case. So that's something that we really need to talk about, is that if a parent thinks that this is what's best for their children, they do the research and they decide that this is going to be best for their child, then who is somebody else to say that it's not? I'd argue that if you don't get your child vaccinated, it's child abuse, but that's a parent's decision. So it's like, that's where we have to really look at, where is it a parent's decision and when is it someone's has to butt out? And with that, it's not my job to tell you that you have to vaccinate your child. So is it your job to tell someone that they don't know what's best for their child when they say that they can get this hormone treatment?
And Emme, I'm going to give you the last word on this, and then we're going to go to our last segment that I know you all been waiting for, the conspiracy theory moment. But this has been what I expected, a lively conversation, and I'm just impressed. When we start talking about sexual this or sexual that, it can get a little weird sometimes. And this is definitely a topic that I've been very much educated by all three of you this evening, and I do appreciate that. So, Emme, go ahead and give us the last word, and then I want you to tell us about your band, Almost Fameless, and the drum garage and all that other good stuff.
Well, we can't always trust that parents do know what's best for their children. We have to look out for the children. We need to look out for them as a society as a whole. My parents thought it was just fine to beat on me constantly. I grew up in a violent home, and a lot of parents think it's okay to beat on their children. It doesn't mean that it's right. So we need to look out for the children. We need to look out for their safety. So that's where I stand on this. I believe that we have to look out for our kids, and if parents aren't bright enough to do that, then we need to start asking some more serious questions. Now, as far as my band, Almost Fameless, we're a rock band here in Indianapolis. We play shows all over town. We play the Historic Melody Inn quite a lot. We play the Flyover, and shout out to the Flyover. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have had any venues this year due to the shutdowns. They actually altered their bar so that they could do underage shows and bring the youth bands in to perform, and that way it would be all legal. And so they supported the youth bands, they supported the adult bands, and we're in a program called Rock Garage. It's run by Preston Nash and Rocky Nash, and it's up in Castleton. They give music lessons. They teach you how to be in a rock and roll band, and then they set you up with these wonderful gigs all over town. I've been lucky enough to be involved in a lot of charity events. Back in 2019, we performed for support of Second Helpings at the Tonic Ball. We have played for numerous other churches. Whenever somebody has trouble in our community, we always step forward and do a show for them. We've had a couple of members who have had cancer, and we raised money to pay their bills. We have had friends whose homes have burnt down, raised money to get them back on their feet. And we take care of us. We take care of the community. We take care of the people that we love. It's a wonderful program, and I'm very lucky to be part of it. My son has been in the the program for 6 years. He's one of Indy's youngest recording artists, putting out his third EP, I believe this month.
Great. We had a question there. What do you play or sing in the band? I know the answer. I bet nobody else does.
I am the bassist. I'm the sexy trans girl bassist, 6 foot tall bassist for Almost Fameless, and nobody wants to hear me sing.
Well, speaking of singing, before we let you go, we have a birthday on the show today. And guess what? We actually have somebody that can sing. So Jacob, this is how good we get along. It's like cats and dogs getting along on the show here. So Jacob is going to sing happy birthday for Ashton today, who's not 26 like the dummy on the show said. She's 25. I'm not trying to get her out, age in there. So Jacob, go ahead, entertain us.
All righty. Well, just to give you guys a little background, like I said before in the first show, I'm a Frank Sinatra impersonator. That's kind of my big thing. I started a business doing it, a musical business, and I'll be singing Happy Birthday in the style of Frank. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ashton. Happy birthday to you.
Now that was awesome. That one last comment here. That this is from Alex Henvey, and she's a good person. She's a good person. So with that, Emme, we appreciate you coming on here, and if you could drop that information in the chat for folks if they want to get their kid involved in the rock and roll band and that type of stuff, and also where you're going to be playing and how we can look at your website. I want to do a little promotion for you on that. We pretty much, I'm sorry, I said Alex is a he, so I'm new to all this language now, so I apologize to Alex on that, and maybe he'll come on our show and we'll talk about that type of gender thing. So Emme, thanks a lot, and just appreciate it. All right, everybody, great discussion, and both of our co-hosts, you guys are amazing. I mean, because this is a tough subject, and it was, slanted one way, and Ashton, you did a great job trying to be that, you got to be a little bit of the punching bag, but it's your birthday, so happy birthday. How's that?
Thanks.
So we're going to get into this next segment here. Let me get it pulled up, and let's go. We're doing conspiracy theory this week, so let's get ready for it.
Hey, y'all, it's time for the conspiracy theory, so you better get your tinfoil hat out, and let's see what's going on this week.
That cracks me up every time I see my goofy face on.
I forgot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Jacob. Jacob's usually the one, and he's got it. So my antenna's a little bit off there, whatever. So we have, I look like Flash Gordon here with a tinfoil hat. So we got some conspiracy theories for you. These are all, all pretty good ones. I'm going to lead off because mine transfers into this. So my conspiracy this week, and I think a lot of people have heard this one before, but Michelle Obama is a man. I told people I was going to do that this week, and they were like, yeah, and you know that. So I'm going to go with, that's my conspiracy theory, and I apologize for not having pictures, and we're saving the birthday girl for last because she's going to win the internet again. So Jacob, what is yours? That was pretty lame on my part. I just, wanted to tie it into the show. So Jacob, what do you got?
Well, my conspiracy theory relates to something that happened about 2 weeks ago now, but kind of in the days of the 24-hour news cycle 2 weeks ago was like 2 years ago. But some of you might remember that Bill Gates recommended to all the people living in first world countries, the Western Europe, United States, etc., that we should all switch over to 100% synthetic beef. Now, most people don't understand what that synthetic beef really is. We think maybe it's soy, maybe it's, some other sort of vegetable product. But in reality, it is equivalent to Soylent Green. And if any of you people saw Soylent Green, from the movie from the early 70s. Soylent and Green is people. So Bill Gates wants us to eat each other.
Wow, it's like
Cute.
one of my friends said, well, if you get a bunch of stoners and burnouts and you put them in there, is that like gummies? I didn't make up the don't send the hate mail to me. Don't send it to me. So we're saving the birthday girl for last on this. So, and we're running a little over tonight, but I knew we'd have a great show. So I'm going to give us a pass on that. So I'm going to pull up the screen here for Ashton to take it away and go ahead and win the internet.
All right, so this is the conspiracy of the curse of Princess Amun-Ra. Okay, so I'm going to give you a timeline here. This is really in depth. We're really working this out. So 1500 BC, she was mummified and buried deep in an Egyptian vault. Okay, cool. So in the 1890s, 4 Englishmen traveled to Luxor to purchase the tomb containing the remains. One vanished, one was shot, one went bankrupt, and the other one fell severely ill. So after that, a London businessman bought it, and 3 of his family members were injured, and his house caught on fire and burned down. So then it was placed in a British museum because they didn't want it anymore. And the people transporting it were seriously injured or died within a few days of having contact with it. And the museum's night watchman complained that they heard sobbing coming from inside the coffin. And then a journalist took a picture of the coffin to put in a paper and write up about all of this. And a face appeared when they developed it. And it traumatized him. And he actually ended up killing himself. And then in 1912, an American archaeologist didn't believe any of this and paid to have the mummy brought to the United States in April. And the boat it was being transported on was the Titanic. So here's where we go. But wait, here's my theory. This is where the conspiracy gets really crazy. Someone dove down in the ocean where this happened, and they found the tomb of Princess Amun-Ra January of last year and messed with it. And that's why we had 2020. So
I tell you, you did that on purpose. You got us last time too on this. And that is you dug deep for that one, right? You dug deep for that one.
I got it off TikTok.
Okay. Well, hey, you can. I learned how to swing my golf better, have a golf swing better. By watching the TikTok. So hey, you can learn a lot of stuff on TikTok. So I'll tell you what, great show as usual, folks. And we're working on a topic for next week. I don't know how we're going to top this one, but we're sure going to try. So everybody say bye, Ashton. And then Jacob. And thanks for tuning in. And tomorrow night, do something indie, 8:00 live. Andrea, I'm forgetting the name. I'm on the
Moorehead.
Yeah, Moorhead. Yeah, she's going to be on there. Important news anchor, 7 Emmy winning, all that good stuff. So tune in for that at 8 live. In the live chat, you can ask her questions. She's going to do her thing. So until next week, y'all, here you go. Let's go ahead and sign it on out.